We love Classical Conversations.
Your organization is known worldwide, and we certainly appreciate every facet that you do.
I do believe in what you're doing because I've seen it in my family.
I'm so excited about all the things that, Robert, you guys do with Classical Conversations. It's been a huge blessing for our family.
Grateful for the work at Classical Conversations. You're a leader, and you have been in this movement for a long time.
I do feel like I have a debt of gratitude to you, your family, all of CC for just the fruit that has come from CC.
Appreciate all that you guys do, both through this wonderful podcast and also through Classical Conversations, which I am convinced is the best education resource out there. Thank you very much for all that you do for the cause of Christ and for our families and for our children. Really, really appreciate it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Refining Rhetoric. Today I'm super excited to have Matthew Staver with us. He's the founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, one of America's leading religious liberty law firms, a licensed attorney. He's argued 3 landmark cases before the U.S. Supreme Court and has published over 300 legal opinions. He serves as a senior pastor while leading Liberty Counsel's national litigation effort. He reads Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, and Syriac. I can't even read the terminology. And he graduated first in his seminary class with a groundbreaking research on the historical Jesus. Former vice president of Liberty University and dean of its law school, Matt has trained the next generation of religious liberty advocates. He chairs multiple organizations, including the Liberty Counsel Action and Freedom Federation, and serves as vice president and chief counsel of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference, representing over 42,000 evangelical Hispanic churches. He's authored several books, including Faith and Freedom, a complete handbook for defending your religious rights, and hosts the Faith and Freedom podcast. All that to say, he knows a lot about a lot. So, Matt, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. My pleasure to be with you.
Now, we know that we've had a lot of wins in the Supreme Court lately, and some going farther than others. But, what are some of those religious liberty fights that you're involved in right now that Christians need to be paying attention to?
Well, we've had a lot of wins in the Supreme Court, certainly since 2022. We had a case that we took to the U.S. Supreme Court. I argued, and we won 9-0, called the case Shurtleff versus City of Boston. And that was involving free speech and religious freedom to be able to raise a Christian flag in a public forum that everybody else was able to have access to for all different kinds of viewpoints. But they excluded the Christian flag, not because of the flag itself, but because on the application, Hal Shurtleff, the founder of Camp Constitution, referred to it as the Christian flag. And if he had removed the word Christian on the application and put some secular modifying word in front of flag, it would have been okay. So if his perception of what was being raised on the flag was that it was secular, irrespective of what design it had, it was okay. But if his perception was that it would be Christian, it was a no-go. And so the lower courts and the City of Boston used a 1971 case called Lemon versus Kurtzman out of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court unanimously rejected that, 9-0. We won. And that set the thing in motion to overturn Lemon, this terrible decision that perverted the First Amendment and distorted its application. So that's a huge win in 2022. Of course, the Roe versus Wade abortion decision was overturned in 2022 as well. We've had major cases that just came out of the U.S. Supreme Court involving parental rights in Montgomery County, Maryland, where they wanted to indoctrinate kids in the LGBTQ curriculum from kindergarten, believe it or not, first grade. And they would not allow parents to opt out. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the parents that they have a religious right under the First Amendment to be able to direct the education of their children and opt their children out of this offensive LGBTQ indoctrination. We just won a case against Oakland Unified School District, right there in the San Francisco, California area, where they banned the Good News Clubs, sponsored by Child Evangelism Fellowship. These are after-school clubs for K through 5, elementary school level. Amazing ministry. And the Supreme Court has already ruled on this, June 11, 2001, that you can't discriminate against these Christian viewpoints with the Child Evangelism Fellowship Good News Clubs. But schools have, post-COVID, used the excuse, after closing down all the clubs, to allow only the secular clubs and to exclude the Christian clubs, and that's what happened in Oakland. We filed suit. We just won a couple of weeks ago. And now as school starts, these after-school Bible clubs that are very powerful clubs where young kids, by the parental permission, where every parent would consent to having their child attend. They can learn the Bible, they can learn scripture, they can sing Christian songs, they learn about character development, they read Bible stories, but everything is immersed from a Christian worldview. So they're very powerful, amazing clubs, and they'll be on campus now as a result of this case that we fought on behalf of Child Evangelism Fellowship. So there's a lot of issues taking place, a lot of battles, and I think we're making a lot of headway in the area of religious freedom.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Roe v. Wade, and I know it seems like we're taking space, like we're advancing our cause, which is great to see. And of course, Trump's been able to put those individuals on the Supreme Court. Maybe he'll have a chance to do one more other one. But with the Roe v. Wade, the second kind of idol is Obergefell. So where does that stand? Is that, I read in the news a few days ago that they might be reconsidering that, or the lady who initiated that lawsuit in Kentucky is trying to get it overturned.
Yeah,
are
that's
you guys
our
involved
case.
in that?
Absolutely. Kim Davis, that started in June of 2015. Kim Davis was an individual who made a mess individually in her life, but was radically changed and transformed by Christ just a few years before this happened. And she gave her life to the Lord, an amazing Christian woman. And then she became the elected clerk in Rowan County, Kentucky. And then the Supreme Court came down with this 5-4 opinion that reinvented the idea of marriage to what it cannot be. It's just ontologically impossible, but they did. And that resulted in Chief Justice John Roberts reading from the bench a dissent. And he's never done it before, never done it afterward. It's to show his absolute opposition to what they did. And he said 5 lawyers, that's his words, imposed their own opinion, not a legal judgment, and that their opinion has nothing to do with the Constitution. So this particular case began, and Kim Davis said she's not going to issue any licenses to same or opposite sex couples while she is asking for a religious accommodation simply to have her name removed. And in that interim period where she was pursuing the religious accommodation, she got sued. And she was sent to prison for 6 days for refusing to put her name on a license for 2 people of the same sex, which does not comport with God's design for marriage. And she went to prison for 6 days. And then while she was in prison, a deputy clerk actually issued licenses but scratched out her name. 3 plaintiffs had sued. One set of plaintiffs said, that's okay, that's all we wanted. The other 2 came after her personally. Well, a few months later, a new governor was elected, and he gave her a religious accommodation through executive order. And then in April of 2016, the legislature unanimously passed an accommodation for all clerks. They can remove their name. So she got the accommodation they wanted, that she asked for. And then the people that wanted the license, they got the license, but 2 of the couples wanted her name on it. And so they came after her, and the case continued for the next many years. We went to a jury trial in 2023. 2 juries in the same courtroom at the same time. They then deliberated. One came back within 45 minutes, 0 damages against Kim Davis. The other one came back and inexplicably awarded $100,000 against Kim personally.
Wow.
So then the judge tacked on $260,000. So the damages against Kim personally is $360,000 and counting. And these 2 people, David Ermold and David Moore, they have been on a mission to humiliate her Christian beliefs because they wanted her name on it. They wanted to mock her Christian faith. And so now we have taken this case to the Supreme Court. It's pending. The justices will meet at the end of October, early November, and make a decision whether to take the case. And if they do take the case, I'll argue it in 2026, and a decision will come down by the end of June 2026. And the 2 issues in the case are, number 1, Kim should be protected absolutely by the First Amendment Free Exercise Clause. She should have gotten the accommodation that the First Amendment grants and requires. And number 2, this Obergefell opinion that has no basis in the Constitution should be overturned. And that's the big issue that's catching the attention of media around the country and even worldwide, that this case could be the one that actually overturns the Obergefell so-called same-sex marriage opinion.
So, I mean, so it sounds like there's two options. One is Kim could be found to have no personal liability, but Obergefell still stands. And then
Right.
if Obergefell falls, what is the really consequences of that? Because it doesn't sound like, I mean, it sounds like you could still get a marriage certificate in states for same-sex marriage, or would each state kind of be like we've seen with the fall of Roe, and each state's going to make its own rules and laws. And I think a big part of that is, of course, insurance and healthcare costs have skyrocketed since that opinion, as we've all been forced to pay for other people's lifestyles that don't comply with nature. So, what are the consequences of if Obergefell is overturned?
It would be similar to what we saw happen with Roe versus Wade, the abortion case overturned. It would go back to the states. Marriage has always been regulated on a state level. Property distribution, the age of marriage, the sanguinity in terms of the close relationship, whether you can marry someone of a certain relationship level, always been regulated by states. And obviously the definition of marriage has been a given. Marriage is a union of man and woman. States didn't invent it. That comes from creation, from millennia of human history. It's obvious, it's a given. But that changed on June 26. So overturning Obergefell would mean that those people who have a marriage license now, under the federal law known as the Respect for Marriage Act, that would grandfather them in. So those people that have licenses would continue to have licenses as long as they live, or they are in that relationship. But states going forward, immediately the next day, would revert back to where they were before June 26. Most states have constitutional marriage amendments. There's 30 plus states that have amended their constitution to say marriage is a man and a woman, and they have not repealed those constitutional amendments. They would automatically come back into existence. In addition to that, virtually every other state has a state law that says marriage is the union of a man and a woman, and those statutes have not been repealed. So those would come back into effect. So overwhelmingly, the nation would go back to marriage as the union of a man and a woman. And then there would be the political debate that would happen within each state, like you see happening right now with abortion. So that's what would happen. The consequences of not overturning it would be devastating for Kim. She would face bankruptcy. Beyond Kim, it really sends a message that you can be persecuted when you should be accommodated, when your religious freedom should trump LGBTQ, because it's under the First Amendment. LGBTQ agenda can trump religion and target you and punish you because of your Christian faith, particularly on something that is so universally understood through millennia of human history, marriage as a union of man and woman. The consequences would be devastating. And also, the consequences for distorting the Constitution are devastating. You have 5 lawyers. That's why Chief Justice John Roberts read his dissent from the bench. That's unusual. You never usually see that happen. It happens, it's rare, but the Chief Justice has only done it once in his entire career, and it was on this case. And the reason he did it is because he wanted to emphasize how bad this decision was, how far off the constitutional mark this opinion was, and that's why he said 5 lawyers imposed their will, not a legal judgment, and the opinion has nothing to do with the Constitution. It really distorts the Constitution, and when you have 5 lawyers, in this case, that really try to create marriage in their own image and defy the Creator, defy objective reality, and impose it on the people when the Constitution says nothing about that, then that really threatens our freedom here in this country. That means 5 lawyers can do anything. When they can actually defy an objective reality that a little kid can understand and impose it as though it's under the Constitution, that's a frightening prospect. So that's why it's important that Obergefell is overturned. And in fact, when Obergefell was decided, Justice Alito wrote in a dissent, and he forecast the fact that people are going to be persecuted for their faith on this issue. And he actually comes back to that again later on in a previous statement on another case. And then when Kim Davis, in an earlier iteration of this case on another matter, reached the Supreme Court in 2020, Justices Thomas and Alito said Kim Davis was the first victim of their cavalier treatment of the Constitution and of marriage, but she won't be the last. So this really sets an agenda, a tone, and that's why it needs to be overturned.
Hey everyone, interrupting today's episode to tell you about the 2026 Classical Conversations Family Cruise. I hope you have heard about it. Classical Conversations 2026 CC Family Cruise is going to set sail on May 16th, 2026 out of Miami. This is an exciting adventure open to all CC family and alumni. We're going to try to do some stuff for alumni on this cruise. It's going to include a National Memory Master Competition, National Commencement, and special CC family activities. Interest is booming with over 800 people already interested in cruising with us, and cabins are selling out fast. We don't want you to miss this. You can book your cabin now at classicalconversations.com/cruise-2026. That's classicalconversations.com/cruise-2026. And remember, to participate in Classical Conversations activities, you need to book through the CC group. So grab your sunscreen, your beach bag, and join us on board. We'll see you at the 2026 Classical Conversations Family Cruise. It's going to be a blast. Don't want to miss it. Now, let's get back to the show. Well, if any of the cases over the last couple years are an indicator, I think there's a good chance that they do it, and praying that they do. What should we be doing? Because it didn't seem like the pro-life movement had a lot of great talking points. They caught the dog caught the car, and then they got ran over in the next election in some ways, shapes, and forms. What are some of the things that we need to be thinking about as Christians and as leaders, and that we should be considering on these arguments if it does get overturned, so that we can continue to make the case that it's not government's job to define marriage?
That's a great question. And I think every pulpit, every Christian, every believer, every person needs to understand the importance of marriage. You have to ask yourself the question, what is marriage for? Why is it significant? Why is it different? Why is it necessary? And if you look at marriage from a biblical standpoint, it's different and unique than any other human relationship. It's the only human relationship where the two become one. Genesis says that. Matthew records that as Jesus saying the same thing, that the two become one flesh. Paul says that also throughout his epistles and writings. The two become one flesh. There's no other human relationship where the two become one. So it has a unitive component. It has a procreative component. The two are able to procreate another human being in the image of God, the highest created order. And thirdly, it has a spiritual component. Ephesians chapter 5 says that husbands love your wives and wives respect your husbands. He says this is a great mystery. What he's really speaking about, however, in the context of marriage, in that relationship, is Christ's relationship to his church in two ways. As the two become one in marriage, Christ incarnated into human flesh. And also he gave sacrificially for his bride. And so therefore have that sacrificial love. So marriage has a spiritual component that teaches us about God and who he is more than any other human relationship. So it has a unitive, a procreative, and a spiritual component. Also, children do best when they are raised with a mother and a father. Moms and dads, male and female, husband and wife, they make a difference for better in the well-being of children. They add something unique and different to the relationship that the single gender does not. Same-sex marriage permanently precludes children of ever having a mother or a father. And unlike single parenting, same-sex marriage not only removes permanently one gender from the child's life, which has its own significant consequences, but also skews the view of the missing gender. So two women would have a negative spin on the missing male. Two men would have a negative spin on the missing female part of that relationship. So it has a consequence to the children. Also, it has a religious liberty component as well. And this is what we see happening in the Kim Davis case. And this is what Justice Alito predicted when he dissented in Obergefell, that with this cavalier opinion by 5 lawyers, people of faith and goodwill that believe in the Bible, that believe in millennia of human history, that believe in objective reality, that two people of the opposite sex in marriage is what we've known from millennia of human history and what's obvious. that those people would be targeted for their Christian and moral values. And that's Kim Davis. And he has raised that again and again, that this would set a course of persecution, of consequences to people of faith because of this Supreme Court's cavalier treatment of marriage and the Constitution. So we need to be prepared for this, and we need to be very bold. If you look, for example, at Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, take a look just from a political standpoint. When he was first elected, he won by 30,000 votes, very slim margin. But during his first term, he took conservative Judeo-Christian values, abortion, life, the issue of gender and gender ideology, took all of that on. He was not afraid of the battle. He didn't shy away. And he articulated why these values were important. And guess what happened? When he ran for governor again, overwhelming, he had election victories all over the state, changed places in the state that were politically liberal to politically conservative. Why? Because he actually advanced those Judeo-Christian values, and he was not afraid to run from them, and he articulated them. And when people heard them, it resonated. So we need to be prepared individually, as a church, as a community, to defend God's created design of marriage as the union of a man and a woman.
Absolutely. And I think, bringing up DeSantis is great, because you do see so many of these people who get elected, they give us lip service until it's time to have actions. And you see 50% of Christians or so don't vote. Well, maybe because they don't have people they feel like they can vote for that are going to represent them. And when we do see people standing up for how God designed the world instead of Satan's plans for this world, that they see political victory as well. So yeah, I think we'll have a good chance. And if we have you all arguing that case, and with our new Supreme Court makeup, that we can see it overturned. And I hope this time that Christians are ready to defend marriage on how God defined it, and not let that slip away. Because when we get that wrong as a country, we just see so much other stuff falling around us at the same time. So Matt, thank you so much. You're the founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel. Where can people find out more about Liberty Counsel today?
They can go to Liberty Counsel's website, lc.org. And for this particular case, lc.org/Kim, lc.org/Kim. We appreciate your prayers for this case, for protection, and for favor with the United States Supreme Court justices.
Thank you so much for being on today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. We need to start having these conversations with people at church. I do hope that we're less than a year away from God's definition of marriage being law of the land in about 30 states, and being able to work to get it across the U.S. as the law of the land. So please share today's episode. And as always, we'll see you next week on Refining Rhetoric. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.